what kind of conversations were you having with the participants of the documentary before you shot? Were you trying to set up what they were going to talk about, or how did you set the scene with them?
Well, we don't really ask them to say anything. I mean, what we're doing is we're so immersed in their lives. Like, if you see a scene here, like the Choke family having lunch outside, we shot that scene lasted 2 hours, and we've shot that 5 times, 5 different lunches, because most of the time nothing happens. They just eat and then stop eating, and we have nothing. So, but you're looking at it as a small, like a 2.5 minute part of a scene that lasted almost 2 hours. So that's why these films take a long time. This film took 2 years to make because we're only shooting the 1 shot a day. And at the end, we hope to get a story from these characters. But we don't go into a film with a story at all. We just have a hunch that we think there's something interesting in this community. We like the community. We personally enjoy being there. And we just hope somewhere some of these characters are going to kind of give us an arc. And when you spend 2 years with families, inevitably something is bound to happen.
So the question is, how much of what we're seeing are like happy accidents that happen versus deliberate choices that you're making, whether from the set direction and whatnot? In particular, a scene near the beginning with the 2 boys where they're wearing opposite color shirts and then on opposite color horses. Like, did that just happen, or did you ask to set that up?
Well, because we're working in this tone, in this monochromatic tone, in that particular case, we are conscious of separation, because we knew, well, in that scene, they're very competitive, these 2 kids, and they're constantly racing against each other, claiming that one horse is better than the other one. But we also knew that we did want visual separation. So, and those are their horses. Their horses happen to be one light and one darker. And their clothes, yeah, we did ask for separation in their clothes, so they did bring 2 outfits, and one actually flew off. So we ended up with this, in this case, a happy accident. But we are, our frames are very, very specific frames. We don't really interfere. We create a frame that really looks beautiful, and it creates an environment where the characters can be unencumbered in front of the camera, and also, because the camera is not really moving most of the time, with the exception of like the horses you see, the camera is still, and we don't have a big crew. There's really just Gregory and I, and a sound person that's really there. So we're constantly there. So they really forget about us in the process, and they really forget about the camera. They don't even know. After the 3rd or 4th time we're there, the camera becomes part of us. So they're really unaware of it.
So how did you come to find this community, and how did you convince them to, participate in this project?
Well, we spent time looking at different communities around Argentina. We started in the south, in Patagonia, and there really weren't. There were gauchos, but they were isolated. There were solo gauchos really managing a big flock, like 200 to 300,000 sheep. But they lived really isolated lives, and there was no community there. And then we looked in Corrientes, which is the opposite side, the East Coast, and it was really beautiful because the gauchos spent most of the time in water. The horses and the gauchos were really knee-high in water, and it was cinematically beautiful, but it was flat. And there was a community there, but really visually, we wanted something more interesting visually. We wanted mountains and some variation. And then I went on Instagram looking for somebody that knew these communities, and this photographer was embedded in this community. We're really close to between Chile and Bolivia, the far west corner of Argentina. And we spoke to him on the phone, and he said, well, I've been going here for 12 years, 3 times a year, and I've been photographing them. They're a really close community, but I'll bring you in. And that's how it started. We just spent 3 weeks with him first in this community, slowly. Then we took 3 weeks off and came back again for 3 more weeks with him. And then maybe after 3 months, we finally gained their trust. And it still took a while. I think it took maybe a year before they really trusted us, that they thought what we were doing was... the issue was they wanted to see, because they said, look, we're very, very poor compared to what we know of Americans. They don't have really access to media, but what they know from Americans is really what they read about movies. But what we did was the first time we filmed them, we shot the scene and we turned the viewfinder around, and we asked them to watch what we filmed, and literally Mario and his wife Alcida just literally cried, like they just cried, seeing how beautiful and how the way we saw their lives, how respectful their lives were, and how we saw them as being this really interesting family, because they thought, their lives are hard. It's a really difficult life that they have. Farming is really tough, and cattle work is really tough. But I think they saw that our intentions were good. And then when they finally saw the film, we had a special screening for them in Argentina, like about a month ago, and they all were just, the whole community was just weeping, and so that was great.
So, question is regarding your editing process for the film, in that there are these kind of narrative structures that we see throughout the film following certain characters, but at the same time, we cut to just very poetic scenes that maybe don't have that same narrative movement to them. So how do you work all that out? Is it intuitive, or how do you do it?
Well, Gabriel Rhodes is an outstanding editor, as you can see. He, our process is pretty unique. It takes an editor a while to really understand it, because we don't have any cutaways, and there's no B-roll, and there's so few scenes in this film. I think there's 119 scenes in this film. So when you move one component, it really changes the entire flow of the film. So, we knew probably 6 or 7 months into it, we understood the arc of the characters, like Wally, who you're talking about the condors. It was very difficult, really, to understand his arc using cinema, because his job, he has 400 cows. They all give birth for a 2-week period in December. When they give birth, because of climate change, the condors, for the first time, are actually attacking live animals, which they never did before. So it was very difficult to really have that come true in his story. So you see him talking to his friend Pablo, and he's explaining how what the condors are doing, and he's talking about some examples of a young cow that was attacked by a condor and gutted and things like that. So but then we were thinking, well, how do we take this bird that's massive? It's a 10-foot wingspan, but there's no scale in the sky to show it. We had no clouds. So we figured, how do we show it? So we use sound design. And so, we try to, when we sat with Stephen, our sound designer, we said, what is the sound of an eternal threat? So what we use is these frequencies that you can only hear in the theater here, that you can't hear really on your computer, but we have these subsonic frequencies that just make you feel like there's some anxiety and something is about to happen, that we use for his scenes. So every time you see these condors flying overhead, there's an intent that there is some imminent danger. So in some of the scenes, we try to we juxtapose mystery, surprise, and humor. Those are kind of the words that we're thinking about when we're editing. So there's always a bit of things are a bit unpredictable. And it is intuitive, this process of editing. It's really not a logical process. There are arcs for each character, and there is an arc for the film, but we do try to use poetry. I mean, I think for most of this film is really very poetic, because we want you to feel it. We don't use dialogue to really tell the story as much as we really use cinema, really, to really you feel the story.
So all three of your films, The Last Race, The Truffle Hunters, Gaucho Gaucho, deal with these enclaves, these communities whose way of life is going away. What is it about that attracts you as like a filmmaker? Do you feel like a sense of duty to help preserve that way of life in your own way? But I for one love that you're doing it, but I'm just curious what it is that draws you to that.
Well, Gregory and I have both personally like to be in these type of places. Even when we're on holiday with our family, we want to be in these types of places. So they matter to us. And we like the idea of humanity and of tradition and of craft, that people are making things with their hands, and that there's a passion and an obsession in keeping these traditions alive, and we think they're really important. So we try to find these communities that have these ingredients, and they're very hard to find. I mean, it's just really tricky. We look all over the world constantly. We have researchers working with us to try to find them, and it's just not easy. And we find one, we want to really, I guess we don't want to memorialize it because we don't want it to go away. So, but we want it to last. And we also think that it sets an example, because now with technology and the phone, it's very easy to not do things with your hands. Like with truffle hunting, these truffle hunters, the average age of the truffle hunters was 85 years old. And they have this beautiful relationship with the land and with animals and with nature that we think is really important. And we wanted another generation, because in the truffle hunting world, there was not another generation to follow. But the film kind of helped, and we have a conservation program there that conserved all the, we ended up raising a lot of money. We ended up purchasing almost all the forest land because they were clear cutting it. To create basically a forest of truffle hunters. We gave it all to them. So they'll have this land kind of forever. And we're doing the same thing now with Gaucho Gaucho in Argentina. We have a water program because the water is all full of arsenic. So we have a program just to really teach them, how to do drip irrigation so they can grow crops, and try to kind of show them a way of preserving their life without it being as difficult as it was before.
So in closing, I want to circle back again to the visual element of the film, because every single frame in this movie is just like an impeccable shot. It's gorgeous. And I understand that you did like an exhibition where you sold the stills from the film as like still photographs to help raise funds for the community.
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we at Sundance we made them available. Susan Swartz, they're investors in our film, which we're grateful for, and she has a gallery in Park City, and we showed 7 frames from the film. We printed these beautiful frames in the film, and we sold them all, and all that money is going towards our impact program in Argentina. And we have many besides the water program. We're like Santito. You see our DJ and our newspaper delivery man. He had no roof on his house. So we built a roof on his house, put windows, he has a paved floor. The kids are also, the 2 boys, we renovated their whole house. Guadalupe and her father, Tati, and her family. So the mom had a large chunk of land, 12 hectares of land, that was really unusable because they couldn't afford a fence. So we've fenced in half that property, and now Guada and Tati are offering equine therapy for mentally challenged children in the area. So we have all the families that are in the film we're trying to do everything we can to help them, and then we're trying to do for the community this program dealing with water.